Welcome back to CLIC Connect. This is our second episode. Very important show today. But before we do that, I would like to thank our production partner, Chicago Title National Commercial Services Group of California. Your real estate deals right now have to close on time, more so than any other time. You know what's going on out there. They've got a great team. They can help you with not only your hotel transaction closing on time, and they do have a new hospitality group within the commercial practice, but anywhere across the country on commercial real estate, they can also help you. So make sure when you call Chicago Title's National Commercial Services Group, their hospitality practice or their regular commercial group, let them know that producer Danny and I sent you. They'd love to hear from you, and they'll get your deals closed on time. So with that being done, very important show. As most of you know, if not all of you, the city council in Los Angeles had a vote to push a ballot measure off to 2024, where the residents in the city of Los Angeles will be voting whether or not hotels will be forced within the city limits to take in the homeless. This thing started out, and we're going to explore this throughout this show, and this will probably be the first part of several parts on this subject. But I'm very happy to welcome Bijal Patel, who is the immediate past president of CH&LA, and he is a principal with a hotel company, which is Coast Redwood Hospitality, principal and partner. Sorry about that, Bijal. And then we've also got Mr. AJ Rossitto, who is the advocacy manager for California Hotel and Lodging Association. So both of you guys, welcome to the show. Come on out. There we go. AJ, Bijal, thank you so much for being here. I don't know what's going on with the City of Los Angeles Council. This never should have gone to a vote. This is a horrible idea. But how and why did this happen? I know you guys representing one of our many trade organizations here in the state are at the forefront. You're dealing with not only the state legislative body, but the various cities, counties, and everybody else. And I don't think people realize that the city of Los Angeles, just by square miles, is either the largest city in the nation or the second largest, possibly behind Houston. But I'm going to say we're number one because I like California and I'm an ambassador for our Golden State. So how did this happen?
Well, that's a heavy question to start with, Craig. But I think we have to kind of go back. This has been a slow roll, I think, since pre-pandemic. We've kind of seen local ordinances pop up across the state of California in various municipalities pertaining to hotels and worker protections and all these other kinds of things. So I think increasingly we've kind of seen that our local governments are starting to want to legislate in a way that maybe they feel like Sacramento can't. Especially in the pandemic, there wasn't a lot of legislating going on in Sacramento, and AJ, as you mentioned, is our advocacy manager, so I'm sure he can give a little more insight as to what was going on in Sacramento and what wasn't. But overwhelmingly, throughout the pandemic, we saw local jurisdictions kind of really start to legislate on their own, and I think that's kind of where this kind of started is, hey, instead of dealing with something statewide, let's kind of look at our own communities. So that's kind of my opinion. I don't know if that's correct or not. I'm sure, AJ, you might have a different opinion, but when I ask where this kind of started, that's kind of where I'm kind of going, that I think throughout the pandemic, we did see this kind of transition from, federal to state to then local.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the impacts for the pandemic and just general issues with homelessness on the streets, it's felt at a local level. And so right. In order for this ordinance to even be introduced, the ballot measure to even be introduced, there has to be some level of appetite for it locally. And so what we saw was a ballot measure put forth by labor groups. And when it finally reached obtained the requisite number of signatures, Then it went to the city council, and the city council had the option to either vote and take it up as an ordinance immediately, or push it off to 2024 as an actual ballot measure to appear before voters. And so in order to kind of buy some time and help fend this thing off, CH&LA worked with our local counterparts, Heather at the Hotel Association of Los Angeles, and our national counterparts at CH&LA, HOA, to oppose this measure. And so we actually ended up getting around 18,000, 20,000 emails to local legislators calling on them not to pass the ordinance, not to pass it as an ordinance, and to push it to voters. So this is a huge issue. And I think that based on everything that we've seen from public response to even legislative response, this may not be the type of legislation and not the type of policy making that individuals or even legislators want to pass locally. So that's kind of how we got here and what we're looking at in the future.
And I will just one last thing, about this is I want to acknowledge that we as California hoteliers stepped up immediately almost, in the pandemic. There was that phantom ship that was going up and down, cruise ship that was going up and down the coast, and nobody wanted to dock them. And then finally it was a hotel that said, hey, we'll shelter them, right? And then you kind of saw later iterations of that, Project Room Key and Home Key and all these kinds of things. And so I think we as an industry stepped up immediately to provide shelter to our community citizens that were most in need. And I think now almost now we can't shake that in a way. And they're like, hey, you guys did so well during the pandemic. Let's continue down that path. But it was a different time. We were all in a different place. And I think those programs worked exceptionally well, Project Room Key and Home Key, and you had the support of the county agencies and the health agencies and law enforcement. But and I'm sure we'll get into this ordinance, but this ordinance doesn't provide any of the resources that Project Room Key provided to hotels to be so successful at housing those most in need. So I wanted to kind of also make sure I had mentioned that, because I think that's kind of, when you ask how did we get ourselves into it, no good deed goes unpunished, as they say. And again, I'm very, very proud of the industry for stepping up, but I think this is kind of also a little bit of that too here.
I agree with you, and thank you for saying that you just took the words right out of my mouth on that, because we are, as a community, the first ones to help, whether it is the firefighters on the line trying to put out these wildfires that we take in after they've been out there for so long and rotating in other crews, pandemics, other disasters, earthquakes, floods, any number of things. And you look at the amount of hotels that were bought during COVID to actually convert over to shelters. And, that's what needed to happen. And that's what needs to continue to happen. And, we've got producer Danny will insert a picture of if you're familiar with the 5 freeway from Los Angeles down to Anaheim, there is a Sears Tower there that was built in either the 40s or the 50s, and that's been vacant for years. It was a West Coast office. It was a store and a warehouse. A private group has bought it, and they're looking to put 10,000 beds there as a homeless shelter that will also incorporate mental, dental, and physical well-being, along with some other classes and helping people get back on their feet. That's what's needed, that public-private, and I'm seeing articles every week, whether it's the LA Times, Urbanize LA, various others, that, hey, a new shelter broke ground. This is being added to the inventory. And that's the right way. Now, this ballot measure being pushed off to 2024, in my opinion, we dodged a bullet.
Yes.
It's a bad ballot measure. It doesn't take into consideration the safety of our teams or our guests. And if I've got a hotel in the city of Los Angeles, I now have to report to them, if this comes to be, by 2 p.m. how many keys I have open so that they could put somebody in there. Now, I think a lot of people are going to go, not in my neighborhood, because, you know, and if you're a guest staying at, say, a JW Marriott, the Peninsula, any number of hotels that actually fall within the city of Los Angeles that are 5-star, and all of a sudden you've got somebody across the hall, next to you, down the hall, and there's issues, you're going to have issues. And I think if this goes through, it's going to put the city of Los Angeles into a worse financial state than what they're in already. There's no sales tax. There's no transit occupancy tax. It'll be a floating rate that will also be a detriment to the hotel itself. And then, as an owner-operator, okay, my hotel's not worth what I thought it was and what I was being taxed at, and now I've got to go fight a battle with the tax assessor and collector to get my taxes reduced. But we'll talk about all these adverse impacts in a minute.
I'm like, where do we begin? I mean, you're absolutely correct. All the things you just mentioned, you know, and I think when we talk about homelessness, I think what we don't realize is that overwhelmingly the housing part of it, the shelter, like the putting a roof over someone's head and giving them a place to actually sleep, that's just one part of really what they actually need. I mean, they need so much more than just, you know, a nice bed and a place to shower and shelter. A lot of times they need resources, they need medical help, they need help with their children, you know, all these other kinds of things. And I don't think that this addresses any of the other things that those individuals are going to need.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, kind of tying it back to the difference between this proposed program and Project Room Key, for example, where those support services, those other wraparound mechanisms were in place. And here, there is no provision for it. It has some ambiguous ties to maybe supportive services, but the reality is it's not anywhere near as concrete. Hoteliers won't have the ability to enter into actual contracts with service providers, with the city. You just don't have that level of kind of complete holistic approach. And if you're looking at kind of demand for rooms, during the last reported data dump that we saw for occupancy for rooms like Project Room Key, only 82% were occupied. Wow. So there was definitely room to actually get people into rooms. The number of available rooms, the amount of available housing is definitely an issue, like without question, in the city and in California generally. But what we're seeing is underutilization of existing resources. LAHSA, for example, the county housing agency, they returned $150 million to the feds that they couldn't spend. Same reports coming out that housing developers were literally lining up trying to get access to those funds. So it's a matter of efficiency and ability to act on available resources, in our eyes, more than an actual supply on the temporary rooms that are available. So,
absolutely, and unfortunately, I've got to say we dodged a bullet by not having the city council just vote this measure through. And AJ, you're our advocate. What's the city council saying, without naming names? I mean, I can't imagine that councilman or woman in district pick one wants to upset their contingency, their voters. They don't want to, they want to take care of the homeless. But, this will kill new development. If you're looking to build a new hotel in the city of Los Angeles, you're going to say no. You're not going to do it. Yeah. And AEG, shortly after this, went to the city council announced that they were going to put almost $1 billion into renovations of the Crypto Center, the former Staples Center in LA Live, and they run the convention center. What's the adverse impact on all that? What are they saying to you about all this?
So, I mean, I strongly believe that actions speak louder than words. And so what we saw during the vote was the city council saying, hey, look, this is a really complex issue. We need solutions, but we're not quite sure that this is the right solution at this time. So by putting it off to voters, they're kind of giving us time to get all of the information out about what the actual issue is, how to resolve it, things of that nature. And essentially it's a complex issue. It's a complex bill or complex ordinance ballot measure. And so there's confusion by many on the part of many legislators. There's support by some, and there's opposition by some. The reality is, again, because it's such a complex issue and such a complex measure, it's going to come down to the wire. It's going to come down the wire again on the ballot.
So we've got 2 years to inform the public about what's going on. Now, if this passes here, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the fear is that this spreads not only to San Francisco, San Diego, other markets within the state, but also goes beyond the borders of California to say the top 25 markets for hospitality in the nation. The workers won't be safe. Now, there'll be different variations. Your guests won't be safe. How do we inform the public? I know you guys are working on a campaign, and I don't want you to give us the secret sauce or any of that. But, it's a time and a place and staged. And we also, right now, I'm telling everybody, make a donation to our CH&LA PAC. Do the same thing with AHLA, AHOA, all of our trade organizations. They all do fine work. And this is something that we as an industry need to inform the public. And the best way you can help right now is to make a donation to our PACs. So with that said, how are you going to work this out with getting the information out to the public?
So I'll just say, just real quick, I'm sure AJ probably can provide a little more color into how the collaborations are going. But this is going to take a group effort. This is going to take every trade organization, every hotel owner, every hotel worker to really step up. And, Craig, you were with us every step of the way through the Prop 15 fight. That was almost a little bit of a preview as to what we need to do. And I'm actually, you'll never ever hear me say this, but I guess this is being recorded. So I'll have to live with it. But, I'm actually grateful that we had to do what we had to do with Prop 15, as horrible as that was, and trying to advocate and raise resources. I mean, we as an industry hadn't come together really in that way before. And, we were able to come together in 6 weeks and really make a difference and defeat that measure. And I think there's a lot that we can apply now to this and subsequent fights, because the reality is that, as you mentioned, this is potentially the first of many. It could spread. We saw that with the hotel worker protection ordinances. They started in Long Beach and Oakland. They then spread to Santa Monica and all the other places. And, Seattle, Portland, Chicago, New York, these are all metros across the country that are going to be watching or are watching the state of California and what the cities do. So this is a very real threat. And I think, you mentioned it, AHOA, CH&LA, CH&LA. We've got a great group of local local engaged hotel owners as well down there. And so it's going to really take a group effort here. We've got our CH&LA Issues PAC, which allows us to directly fight these measures at the local level. So definitely do, please consider, making a contribution to that. But, in some aspects, we have a little more time, as you mentioned. We were able to push it off to 2024. So we have a little bit more of a runway than we did, let's say, with Prop 15. Right. But it is going to take conversations like these. I mean, the amount of awareness that it's going to take, but I'd say let's go to our hotel workers, our hotel owners, and let's talk to our neighbors, talk to the constituents in the city of LA, because ultimately they're the ones that are going to be voting on this.
I agree with you. And AJ, please, I think you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to say, I think both you and Bijal hit the nail on the head. CH&LA, Issues PAC, those are some of the primary mechanisms that hoteliers around the state and around the city can use to actually support efforts to combat this measure. And when you see calls to action, grassroots calls to action, those are prime opportunities to engage. Every day we're an industry association that works for hotels, for our membership. And so if every support or all the support that we can get from membership, from our hotels and in the state, that goes a long way. The more resources that you guys are able to give us, as far as even just lending your voice to an advocacy campaign, just putting your name on a letter, goes a huge way. So. Yeah.
I also think, it's one of those things, Craig, and I don't mean to kind of go off on another tangent, but just kind of looking holistically at how we as an industry have been kind of operating over the past few years. And again, this is one of several ordinances, that have popped up over that time. And, I think we need to do a better job of staying together. Again, we're very fragmented. We're not like the airlines where there's only 6 and they're all public companies and whatever. I mean, you've got hotel owners and hotel brands and REITs and management companies, and we've got all these kind of divisions, even though we all will have the same kind of goal, right? Like, we all want to be successful. And we want hospitality to be a wonderful industry. And so I think we need to figure out how we come together. And again, these little wins we've had, have been opportunities for us to fine tune that process, and do the outreach that we need to do. But I think we need to figure out how can we come together, because clearly our industry seems like it's got a big red target on its back. And if we don't start coming together and we don't start raising our PACs and, getting our war chest ready and playing offense, essentially, we're going to have a hard time. And I think that's our biggest issue, is we continually play defense and we're not in a position to play offense all the time.
And I think you're going to start seeing that shift a little bit as we continue to build up, as we continue to move out our forward-looking horizon there. We are going to be looking to go a little more offense on this.
Yeah.
Good. And anything I can do to help, anytime you want to use this show as a venue, you guys are more than welcome to come back on that. But, Bijal, you know me very well. I'm normally not Debbie Downer, and I'm usually, got a big smile on my face.
Yeah.
Everything else. But there's one more part of this that I want to touch on before I cut you guys loose. Now, I think we're all in agreement. In this country, we should not have homeless. Okay, we should have mental health. There was a group of people decades ago that took a torch to mental health in this country, and this is part of the problem that we're paying the price for today, because we don't have it. But let's discuss a few of the adverse effects on this. Health and safety of whoever is displaced is paramount, but health and safety of our teams on site and our guests is equally important. But just to, again, I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but, this will impact the values of your real estate and your business. You have these rooms taken out of service. There is no sales tax. There's no TOT tax going back to the city. If I'm a lender, a hotel lender, guess what? I'm having you put more money into CapEx, just because of this. So that's an issue. I may not make as many hotel loans. So now capital has gotten tighter and harder to come by. If I'm an insurance carrier, guess what? Your rates are going up because of all this. And, it just goes on and on, just to mention a few things there. I mean, what do you guys got to comment on this?
Yeah. I think you hit it right, the nail on the head there again. You're going to see increased rates, reduced willingness to engage in the local markets. From a construction point of view, or even an operational point of view, some of the permitting elements are going to make it incredibly complicated to operate locally. And if I'm, speaking candidly, if I'm an operator looking to go into the market, that's going to factor into the calculus.
Yeah.
So it's going to be much more difficult to operate hotels there.
And I think, just giving the hotel owner perspective, kind of putting that hat on, all the things you mentioned, Craig, I mean, it gives us pause, right? It makes us think, okay, how are we going to manage this? Insurance is already a huge issue. A lot of California, because of the wildfires and all that, even liability, like umbrellas have been very difficult, and so these are just adding, right? It's compounding onto how difficult it is to really do business, not only in the state of California, but in a place like LA, where these kinds of things are being talked about. And LA did pass the hotel worker protection ordinance in May. That they had, again, same thing. They had an opportunity to go to the ballot. They didn't. They adopted it right away. And so it's kind of a double whammy. You had that pass, and then this. And I know that has caused a lot of people to take pause. We are just returning from the lodging conference, spoke to a lot of peers who have serious concerns about reinvesting in communities like LA, or are pausing to kind of wait and see. And it's interesting, there's 2 or 3 developments in LA that are being publicly marketed right now. And pre this ordinance, those would have been secret. Those would have been off-market deals, or but brokers are literally trying to peddle these assets out there. But everybody's cautious to buy right now. I mean, you don't want to do an adaptive reuse project in downtown LA and then have this hit you in 2024. So it's a very real problem, and I think I think it's going to affect more of. I take this very personally because I'm a 3rd-generation hotelier. My family, my grandfather founded the business. We've been in the business 46 years, but we're more small time. We're select service, limited service operators, and this is going to disproportionately affect those properties, because if this does pass, yes, you did mention the JW and the Peninsula and all of those, but let's be real. Overwhelmingly, the vouchers are going to go to the select service, limited service properties that don't have a security department and all the resources and all those. A lot of times it's 1 or 2 people managing the front desk, a couple housekeepers here and there. And so the burden on those select service, limited service operators is going to be tremendous.
And the independent, the exterior corridor with a manager's unit. I mean, people forget that hotels primarily are a small business.
Yeah.
You might be in.
I lived in a hotel for 16 years, Craig. I took my first steps in a hotel. You hit it on the head. The manager's apartment.
That was home.
That was home. Yeah. And I can't imagine what my parents would do if, it was safe for us to grow up in that environment. But, in this situation, maybe not so much. We don't know.
Yeah. No,
I will just tell one last story just because it's very applicable. The week before this ordinance was going to be deliberated, I actually was traveling for industry-related travel in the state of California, and I checked into a mid-scale top brand hotel for the night. It was fully sold out. At 5 o'clock in the morning, the fire alarm goes off. Oh. And I kind of let it ring, thinking, okay, maybe it's just going to turn off, or maybe they're testing it or whatever. But then after 5 minutes, I was like, okay, no, it's time for me to go down to the parking lot. Right. Go down to the parking lot, sold out. Every guest is out in the parking lot. Fire department, police department show up. It turns out a homeless individual had pulled the fire alarm, at 5 o'clock in the morning. And, that was, so, this is at a select service property that was sold out, and this is just one example. And it was very real for me. I was like, I experienced this myself. Yeah. So these are all very real stories when you're taking your friends and your kids and, you're traveling, and are you worried about who's in the room next to you, or, all those other kinds of things.
Absolutely. And, and again, to remind the audience, the city of Los Angeles is far more than just downtown LA, the Wilshire Corridor, West LA, Boyle Heights. It's also the San Fernando Valley, with the exceptions of the city of San Fernando, the city of Pacoima, the city of Burbank, and the Calabasas area, which is unincorporated within the county of Los Angeles. So, this thing goes through, it's far and wide. It's just not, downtown LA and the Wilshire corridor. Gentlemen, I want to thank you both. This is going to be a conversation that continues. I want to have you both back again. Bijal and AJ, let's go in that order. And how can people get a hold of you? How can they help? And how can they stay informed about what's going on?
Yeah, you can reach me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on there. And again, I think reach out to calodging.com. That is CH&LA's website. Sorry to take that from you, AJ, but reach out to calodging.com. That's where we share all the information. If you're not a member of CH&LA, please sign up. You should be a member. I tell every hotelier I meet, you should have a line item in your budget every year for AHOA, AH&LA, and CH&LA. If you're not engaged with our trade associations, and it's not enough to just be a part of one, you really need to, because all three, and even some of the local ones, they all offer different perspectives or different opportunities to get involved. And so, I tell everybody, you have to have it in your line item, an advocacy PAC budget item, and an industry trade association membership line item. So as a hotel owner, to all the other hoteliers out there, that's the one piece of advice I can tell you going forward. Have that budgeted in your property budgets every year, those two line items.
Absolutely. AJ?
Well, Bijal, you kind of stole my thunder there.
I know. I'm sorry, AJ.
It's all good. So, if anyone needs to get a hold of me, aj@calodging.com. That's my personal email address. Feel free to reach out if you have questions about the ordinance, potential implications, some of the strategy stuff, or you just want to learn more about CH&LA. More than happy to connect you with those resources and make sure that you are advocated for and represented. So thank you.
AJ, just real quick, how do we get, I know the Grassroots was a big part of, our strategy moving forward. How can people get in touch with you regarding the Grassroots? Can people sign up to get Grassroots alerts, or how do we push that out?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the CH&LA website, we do have a sign up form to receive Grassroots alerts, or CH&LA members automatically receive them as well. You can opt out, but we highly encourage participation in those efforts as well.
Wonderful. Craig, if we're able to share that link at some point, I think that would be really helpful. We need to get as much information to the folks out there as possible.
Send me the link, and we will add it into our YouTube channel and our various other platforms when this is posted. Gentlemen, thank you very much. And again, open invitation to come back anytime. I appreciate your help, your support, the great information today for our hotel brethren. I'm telling you right now, everybody, if you're not a member of our trade organizations, please join, support it. This is our industry. We need to help it. It is under siege right now. So, and CH&LA and AHOA do a great legislative day up in Sacramento every year. I haven't been lately, but next year, I'll be being there.
Craig, we're going to have to do this live from the Advocacy Summit next year, I think.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. I'll bring all the gear. Not a problem.
Yes, let's do it. Let's do it.
Thank you.
And thank you again for always supporting us. We really do appreciate it. You do a wonderful job of being the voice of an industry here.
I am an ambassador for hospitality in California. And every now and again, legislative people make that job really hard for me.
They do. It's very challenging sometimes.
It is. Yeah. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. I look forward to having you back soon.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
That's our show. Very serious topic. Very serious show. This is going to be one of several, I feel. I'm looking forward to having our other trade organizations join me. I'll put an invitation out right now for the entire city council for the city of Los Angeles. If you want to be on this show and discuss this, I'd love to have you here. Anybody else that's connected to this, I'd love to hear from you as well. You can DM us and we will respond. Open, honest conversation on this. We're all going to have our own points of view, but I'm telling you, our industry needs your help. We need the public's help as well. Now, that's all I can say right now. I thank you all for joining us. And as I'm always fond of saying, be kind, share your knowledge. Now go be amazing.